What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the TruthSeekah and Arien podcast. We're excited to be with you today. We have a special guest.
Yeah, this is going to be a really fun talk, and I think you guys are going to love it. So we have a special guest with us today, and her name is Michelle Wiener. Michelle, welcome to the TruthSeekah and Arien podcast.
Thank you.
Good to have you. Your subject matter that we're going to be talking about today, as Arien told you before, is very near and dear to our heart. So we're truth seekers. We're trying to get to the bottom of a lot of these taboo subjects. Once you start talking about them and poking around, you're kind of told to stay away from some of this stuff. But we're going to be talking about your new book, Return to Memory, Recovering the Melchizedek Mysteries Beneath the Sacred Groves. Such a compelling title.
Thank you.
I have questions just off the title, just because of our studies and where it's kind of led us. So that's a big reason we wanted to talk to you. But also in the synopsis of the book, the bio of the book, you talk about the goddesses or the goddess. So This is going to be a really interesting discussion, because you're tying the Abrahamic faith into maybe goddess worship somewhere along the lines where we lost it. But if you want to just kind of give an overview of your book and what you're bringing to the table, we can start there.
Okay, so as TruthSeekah mentioned, my book is called Return to Memory, and it is a very complex title and subtitle as well. The subtitle is just as even more complex. So it's Recovering the Melchizedek Mysteries Beneath the Sacred Groves, and it's centered on the events at Mamre with Abraham's mystical encounter with three mysterious visitors. And some of the questions that are unpacked in the book is, who are those visitors and what hidden mysteries can be found in Mamre? And perhaps Mamre offers the key for reconciliation among the Abrahamic faiths. And when I refer to the Abrahamic faiths, we're talking about Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and then some lesser known faiths that are also connected with Abraham, including the Samaritan community in Israel and also the Druze and Baha'i as well. So this is more of kind of a collective understanding. And as we know, humanity has tried to find reconciliation among the Abrahamic faiths, but it's been almost impossible, whether through peace treaties or, it's been something that an interreligious dialogue. It's been something that humanity has tried to accomplish, but has never quite succeeded. And so this book tries to offer ways to approach some of these very sensitive topics that goes back into Abraham's family history. So, so my book operates off the assumption that Mamre becomes a window into the sacred realm, even revealing hidden mysteries, such as the sacred feminine. And so my book delves into, first of all, Abraham's complex family dynamics. And we know that he would not have won the Father of the Year award, even though he's considered the patriarch of three major world religions. He was kind of a terrible father. And then also the role of Melchizedek in solidifying those oaths and covenants that are passed on to Abraham. And then the role of the Mazarot, what I call Hebrew astrology, or the Hebrew zodiac. And we know that Abraham was told to look up at the stars, and this was connected with his sacred covenant, the covenant that he was given, that was given between, or made between him and God. And he was told to look up at the stars to not only see his posterity, but I like to speculate that perhaps there was more to that than we give credit to. That maybe some of those answers were for reconciliation were found in, or are still to be found in the stars. So And then an additional side topic that I deal with in my book is also the question of the sacred feminine, as it's very much hidden in the symbolism found at Mamre. So, some side topics also include the nature of priest and priestesshood, and I go into this issue. Every Christian tradition has their own definition of apostolic succession versus apostolic tradition, and some of this comes from my studies in ecumenism from earlier on, and I'll explain a little bit more about that later. But but the main question for me is also, what is Melchizedek's hidden influence in all of this? And I certainly believe that he resurfaces in a way that's totally unexpected. And you'll have to read my book to figure out what my views are on that. So, why Melchizedek? Well, Melchizedek is only mentioned in the Bible a couple of times. First of all, in Genesis, where he encounters Abraham, and then after, as spoils of war, with this little skirmish that happens between various kings, Abraham gives 10% of the spoils of the war after receiving a victory. He gives 10% of those spoils to Melchizedek as a tithe, and this is where we get the biblical practice of tithing. So we know that there are specific covenants and promises that are included in that. And with that comes certain promises that are solidified to Abraham through Melchizedek, through what we can only assume is a type of initiation rite,
Hmm.
although it's not really elaborated. That it's not it's not clearly elaborated as that in the scriptures, but we know it's there. And then where was Sarah in all of this? This was a question that came up as I was researching this, because she is mentioned. She's given a new name alongside of Abraham. She's promised posterity, descendants, but where is she in the picture? And is she going through the initiation ceremony alongside of him? This is one of the questions that I entertain. And so as I was thinking about Mamre and the and sort of what could have occurred there, um, this question this question came about because and also, I'm sorry, also I was going to mention that that Melchizedek is mentioned later in the Psalms very briefly. You are a priest after the order of Melchizedek. And then Melchizedek's priesthood is described in much more detail in the book of Hebrews. But what I find also very interesting is that in the Book of Mormon, Melchizedek is mentioned as an actual person. And in this case, he is the king and high priest of Salem. And it's made very clear that he was an actual person, because Christian tradition has often tried um, to turn Melchizedek into this mystical, like pre-incarnate Christ. And
Hmm.
but I think it's good for us to know that he was an actual person, at least according to one source, one sacred source. Um, so this book came about because of a question that I just couldn't let go of. And I was reading, I'll show you, I have this with me. Abraham, it's called Abraham, A Journey into the Heart of Three Faiths by Bruce Feiler. And I was reading this, oddly enough, during the pandemic. And I think the pandemic, we can say that this has, that was a time of awakening for a lot of us, because, we were kind of forced to stay at home. And for me, I had just finished my doctorate. So my head was spinning with ideas. And so I was reading this book by Feiler, and he made a statement that Mamre was the only piece of land that Abraham actually purchased. And it was also where Isaac and Ishmael joined hands after their father passed away. And so it was also a point of reconciliation. And I had to wonder, well, what was it about Mamre that made it magical, that was so powerful? And So this is what led me to explore some of these questions. And so in many respects, my book is scholarly because I am a trained theologian. But at the same time, it's also heavily autobiographical. And I also mention in my book a powerful mystical experience that my husband and I shared in 2007, prior to, we were not married yet, but prior to us getting married, we would get married a year later because of that experience. So we did share this powerful mystical experience. And as I've learned to, at the time, I didn't really understand what was going on, but certainly through my studies, I have uncovered what might have happened. And so I also talk about that in my book.
Great. And that's one of the most beautiful things is, we've interviewed hundreds of people on the podcast over the years. And, a lot of times you get people who strictly come from a scholarly standpoint, who is
Hmm.
just going to give you facts.
Yeah,
And we'll interview other people who are just going to give you spiritual, woo woo, kind of stuff, which is fun. I love both.
it is
But
fun.
I love the beautiful bridge in between where you have the person who is um, they have a spiritual devotion. They believe in spirituality. They believe in spiritual practice. They're trying to better themselves, but that's also coupled with the scholarly um, execution as well.
Mhm.
So, and also for you, with your background coming from Southern Baptist, but
Yes.
studying
Mhm.
comparative theology in college, in which you have a PhD in. I know this is going to be. I know you're well versed in not just the
Thank you.
Bible, but all of the other world traditions and how you
Yes.
can kind of see the common thread or the silver lining that connects them all together, which is always a fun part. It complicates the waters a little bit when you talk to only the religious people who are trained in just one um, idea or philosophy or book. But when you can see how they all run together, your job is to help us and help the listener see how these pieces fit.
Yes, and that is my goal. And you mentioned something about my background. I was raised Southern Baptist. I attended a Disciples of Christ seminary, so that introduced me to the Restorationist movement. And then I got the incredible opportunity to, because of my seminary training, I received the incredible opportunity to study overseas with the World Council of Churches in Geneva, and so that was for a year. And then when I came back, I met my husband, who is of the Jewish faith. And then after shortly after getting married, I converted to Mormonism.
Nice, nice.
Yes.
Um,
Hmm.
so again, you've not only studied, but you've had your foot in a little bit of all of these traditions and
Yes.
practices and feast days and holy days, which are all beautiful. I think that if you're spiritual, you can kind of see again the silver lining and see the beauty in them all.
Yes. Absolutely.
My question is, where does the goddess come in?
Where does the in terms of the book or in
The
terms of
the Abrahamic faith, something that sounds so foreign and maybe even contradictory to a lot of Christians that may be watching this. How does that tie in at all?
I think it's very much hidden in the sacred encounter at Mamre. And we do know that more than likely, of course, the mysterious visitors have never really been identified. We're still debating that today in rabbinic circles and Christian circles. Of course, Christianity would say the Trinity, but that's probably not.
Yeah.
My tradition would say Peter, James, and John, or maybe Jesus was there with them. I don't know, but we're still debating, or maybe it was the archangel Michael with some other angels. So we're still debating this today. But I don't think that matters. But we do know that they were probably male. I think we can reasonably assume they were male. But when you look at the story, there's some hidden goddess imagery there too, and this has to do with Sarah, and just the fact that she is there. And there is this scholarly belief that she has matriarchal connections to that area in Canaan, and that Mamre may have very well been a sacred shrine that she presided at as high priestess.
Mm.
So, and there's some clues there because Abraham asked her to not only to bake bread, which was a ritual to the Queen of Heaven. We know that from
Wow.
Jeremiah.
Yeah.
But it was, she also had her tent set up there, which may have very well indicated not only among the trees, the sacred groves, but that this was a sacred shrine among the sacred groves. And she does have this incredible seer ability to be able to communicate with the spirit realm. And so we know that she may have very well been some type of priestess,
Mm-hmm.
and even the name Sarah is closely etymologically connected with Ashura,
Mm-hmm.
who was a
Yeah.
Canaanite goddess. So there's a lot of hidden goddess imagery there.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
so I'm no expert when it comes to Hinduism, but and I'm just repeating Jordan Maxwell and some other scholars who kind of tie um, Abraham back to Brahma,
Brahma,
which is
Brahman, yeah,
the name of the all
yes,
in Hinduism, and I believe there's a feminine part that ties into Sarai. Is that the name of it in
yes.
Hinduism?
It is Sarasvati.
Sarasvati. So
Hmm.
that's very closely related. I think it's
It
more than a
is.
coincidence.
And there could have been I read, now don't quote me on this, but I did read that there's a possibility that that or there may be a connection there between one of the sons, because he did later marry Keturah. So there may be a connection there between one of their sons,
Mm.
and the founding of Hinduism. We don't really know.
I
Uh,
believe Keturah. Now I may be mistaken, just in our studies. Keturah, does that tie into the incense? Her name. Her name.
I believe her name means incense. Yes.
Incense. Yeah, so
Mhm.
even hidden within the names, you have this kind of a
Yes.
story within a story, or to kind of give you some background that
Yeah.
it's very much nature based,
Yes.
something that it seems like most of the religions have kind of gotten away from, and where the sacred feminine dwells, which is within nature. So
Yeah.
yeah, we saw that deep in our studies.
And even there's even a connection, and my book points this out, that Keturah was the mother of Midian, and I've uncovered some connections between Midian and possibly and the Druze community,
Hmm.
with Jethro being their main patriarch.
Wow.
So there's connections all over the place.
Now, what is your idea on the mysteries beneath the sacred groves? Because I know there's a lot of there's a lot of connection even there with the sacred goddess that has kind of been either erased or just the name was changed in for the words that are being used in the Hebrew Bible.
The sacred groves were where they met to worship the goddess. Historically, we do know that because the Bible mentions the sacred groves of Asherah. Um, but I like to, as a Mormon, I like to point out that there is a also a connection between the sacred grove of Mamre, the sacred grove of Joseph Smith, where he encountered God and Jesus, and also Jesus himself. The Garden of Gethsemane was a
Yeah.
sacred grove, and so there's this redemptive. There's this redemptive quality to that image of the sacred tree, and even the tree of life.
Hmm.
um yeah, is
So
connected with the goddess.
so why is that missing from the traditions, and obviously it's hidden within the text.
Mhm. It is
Not
hidden.
It's not obvious. I'll say obviously it's hidden. It's in there. You kind of got to read between the lines or look up the Hebrew meanings of the words to kind of get the
Mhm.
names of the goddesses. But where did what was the effort to remove their names and their practices and their rituals and their temples and devotion from the traditions. Did you find something like that? Is that within the biblical narrative, which a lot of people do tie it to, or did you see it?
I don't know that there's an easy answer to that. There, scholars do believe that a lot has been edited out,
Mhm.
has been redacted. But there's also room to speak of, when we talk about Revelation, and the tree of life is certainly mentioned in Revelation.
Mhm.
The fruit of the tree of life, the leaves are provided for the healing of the nations. And so, what does Revelation mean but unveiling? And in this case, the unveiling of this goddess imagery, and the deeper mysteries.
So what got you interested in this? Like, what was the thing that again? Because this sounds so foreign to anybody.
Mhm.
It seems taboo for a Christian
It does.
to
Hmm.
be interested in the goddess or the sacred feminine, which we've kind of been told to demonize, if you will, over the years.
Hmm.
What was it for you that kind of led you into that?
Well, in early on in my seminary training, and I was raised, okay, being raised Southern Baptist, you don't have that option to believe in a goddess. And in fact, if you do, it's considered pagan, it's considered taboo, it's considered evil, all of the above, witchcraft, whatever you want to call it. And so for me, when I got to seminary, I had never even really considered it on a spiritual level. I had um, certainly encountered some of these ideas, but I had not personally considered it. And can you hear me okay?
Hmm.
Okay, all right. So yeah, I had not personally considered it, and I remember when my first week in seminary, before we even began classes, I went to church with one of my friends who was a student pastor, and somebody got up to give the communion prayer. In their tradition, it's called, well, some traditions might call it communion or Eucharist, or sacrament, by different names, but communion. So somebody got up to give the communion prayer, and addressed the prayer by Father, Mother, God. And I remember just being a little bit shocked. I couldn't believe I was hearing this. And as I began my seminary training, certainly under some feminist scholars, it was very much stressed that God was beyond gender. And certainly I could accept that. The more I thought about it, I'm like, well, yeah, God is not exclusively male. There's more there. And then as I got to thinking about it more, it does say that humans were created in God's image in Genesis, male and female. And so that, those ideas were kind of, were um, were stressed in my seminary studies. But even there, I didn't quite know where to go with it, until my husband and and again, I didn't figure this out right away. But my husband and I had a mysterious, mystical encounter, when we went to a near a waterfall in the mountains of North Carolina, and we encountered three mysterious visitors who were female, and they seemed to just know things about us they had no business knowing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And it took a long time for me to really figure out what was going on with that particular story. I was not um, I when it happened, I knew something out of the ordinary was happening, but I couldn't have told you what was happening. But in that process, my husband, we had been dating for a while, for several years, and I really, I knew he was the one, but he didn't know that, and he needed some convincing, and so she she convinced him to marry me, and you know, there was some complications there that you know, now I don't blame him for feeling that way, but there was some complications. You know, for one, we have an age difference. But and so I didn't really, I just wanted to get married. I didn't, yeah, I was fresh out of graduate school and just wanted to get married. I didn't really think anything of it and couldn't understand. And he had been down that road before, so you know, there was some complications. Um, but yeah, she knew all of these things, and she pulled him aside and convinced him to marry me, and even said that I had been sent to him,
Hmm.
um, which corresponded oddly enough with another experience that he had, another mystical experience he had, that I didn't even know about until much later.
Wow, that's awesome.
She seemed very aware of that. So some of this was happening without my knowledge. But at the same time, I'm the one that began to put the pieces together. And then by the time I joined the Mormon church, Mormonism does have a belief in, we call her Heavenly Mother. Now, that belief is very limited. And we are, you know, we're told, and I don't agree with this at all, because I mean, I'm just going to say it, I pray to her. But we're told that she's so holy that we can't really talk about her.
Mm. It makes sense. I mean, the moment you start talking about it to a degree around the uninitiated or just religious, fundamentalists, they're gonna start bad mouthing her. Something that's very
Mhm.
sacred, something very near and dear, close to your heart, as Jesus says, tossing your pearls before swine to
That's, yeah,
allow them to
that
make
is
fun of your
key.
mother.
That's
Yeah, it's interesting how, even for me, I have some unconventional beliefs about the Genesis creation story and the Adam and Eve story. And I believe that it's not as literal as it is in the translations that we have been given, that the woman sinned, disobeyed, and brought this destruction upon all mankind. I don't believe that that's the story. And I believe that's just a nugget, one little piece of the scriptures that has been flavored in an anti feminine way.
mhm.
Um, Even the story, once you get to Mary Magdalene, who is this beautiful, faithful, holy, helpful, divine being, right? She was demonized and even
Yeah,
called a
she
whore.
was.
Like, we've made
Mhm.
her as a society into a whore, and that's not what she was at all. So just thinking of that and experiencing the divine feminine number 13 was demonized to the point of not even being included in elevators because it was so unlucky it would bring death and destruction.
That's crazy.
Like,
That's
Yeah,
crazy. Yeah.
yeah.
That it's still today. You can go to a hotel and there's no floor 13. That
Yeah.
is wild.
that
So
is wild. Mhm.
I see why the religion would say don't talk about it in front of people, because then people are going to just find ways to demonize it because it's feminine. And but I think now, like, since COVID, like you said, we've come through these processes of this stripping away of the things that we just accepted as truth without seeking and asking the hard questions, like you've said.
Yeah.
And now we're to a point where we're seeking for ourselves the answers. And once you open your heart and start asking, these beings will come to you and teach you themselves through the
Mhm.
assistance of the Holy Spirit. I That's been my experience anyway, and I'm just grateful that we're returning, I think, to the way it was intended to be, that that divine masculine, divine feminine partnering together is how it was in the original, before in the creation story when we were split from
Yes.
our other half.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
it seems that there's a lot of people awakening to this. And I say a lot of people, speaking specifically from the Christian perspective, there's a lot of Christians who are now looking into and feeling called And just asking questions, which in many cases we're told not to do. Don't ask questions. You'll find out when you get to heaven. You're not supposed to know right now. And they're asking about the feminine. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
them start off, and I'll say this maybe where I started off to incorporate the feminine into my faith and tradition, starts off with just seeing the Holy Spirit as a
Yes.
feminine aspect of God, a more
Yes. The
a
Shekinah.
motherly and
Mhm.
nurturing aspect of God. So a lot of them start there, and that's a great place to start. But
It is a great
eventually,
place to start.
you start
Agreed.
seeing her
Mm-hmm.
names because she actually has names that are sprinkled through the Bible.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm.
I find it real beautiful.
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
Um, so going back to the groves, it's very interesting to note that anybody with a Strong's Concordance, you can get the app on your phone, you can get one of the huge books if you want, but it should be your companion if you're reading the Bible at all. You can look up the original words used in the Greek and in the Hebrew that were used there, and then so I believe for the word grove in the Old Testament is the word Asherah,
Yeah.
and it was changed to grove, and the divine feminine aspect was taken out. And it's very interesting that it was taken out, noting what the word Asherah means. And the
Mm-hmm.
word in Hebrew, Asherah, it means happy. It doesn't
Yes, it
mean
does.
demon goddess of the night. Now, there's those goddesses as
Now there
well.
is that,
Yeah, you got to
yes.
respect them too. Their
Mentioned
names are
in the
in
book of
there.
Isaiah, yes.
They're in there too, and we respect
Yeah.
them. But Asherah meaning happy, like
Yes.
that's maybe that's why they're trying to take away our happiness, or people go searching and seeking rest and finding none in religion. It's because the
Mm-hmm.
happiness was taken out. The two plus two. How can you have a father and a son without a mother? I find that
Exactly.
very interesting, and I do find that as a concerted effort that somebody wanted to remove her name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then her name continues to pop up, right?
Yes.
Another noted one. When people start to do some research, you kind of start off and you start seeing this stuff, you're against it. You start
Mm-hmm.
attacking it. Oh, I see the name of this demon goddess in the Bible. And Easter. Oh my God, Christians are celebrating Easter. That is the worship of Asherah,
Mm-hmm.
Asherah, the pagan goddess. I'm not celebrating Easter anymore. And I have to admit, I went down that path for a couple years
Mm-hmm.
until my heart was open and I started to study with an open heart versus being very biased in the study. And then you start to see her name pop up everywhere else, including the story of Esther in the
Yes.
Bible.
Oh,
Because the
yes.
Esther
Astarte.
is
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Astarte, or Asherah is literally the translation of the word Esther. Like
Yes.
this freaking like superhero of the Bible that we've been told to demonize, but their stories are
Mm-hmm.
woven throughout there that for those who are ready, when you're ready, uh, you can't deny it any longer. You have to
Mm-hmm.
reconcile it with your faith, but there's nobody in clergy that's doing it. So it has to be like this individual spiritual
Mm-hmm.
awakening, which I think is what Jesus was talking about anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that too, a part of our imbalance is when that feminine aspect is being removed. Like your mom is your caretaker. She's the one that birthed you, knows you better than anyone. If you're hanging out with kids who don't have your best interest at heart, your mom's like, probably shouldn't hang out with them. Like your intuition comes from your mom growing up, kind of teaching you how to discern spirits and discern people's intentions. And um,
Mm-hmm.
the masculine is more, structure, more keeping you in line, protective. I mean, there's balance between both, but then like if you see that the feminine's been removed and you see that the happiness has been removed, the people are depressed, they're kept under oppression, under these strict rules and guidelines
Mm-hmm.
without that more Holy Spirit like feminine essence.
Qualities, yeah.
Yeah. And
Exactly.
we got to get it back to come back into balance, I think. Do
Yeah.
you
And
have any advice if, like, if someone who is a Southern Baptist is starting to tiptoe and think maybe there's more to this, but that fear from the structure is so strong. Like, do you
Mhm.
have any advice maybe to someone who would want to start out looking into it in a way that wouldn't be too fearful for them to even try?
Just the question of, asking yourself what the image of God looks like if humans are created in God's image. That's a great place to start.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's beautiful.
Yeah. What other traditions would echo this kind of sentiment of not only just the sacred feminine or the goddesses aspect, but where you actually see them played out in these biblical stories
What are you asking? I'm
from
sorry.
like a comparative theology background, where you start to see this these
Mhm.
stories taking place. Is there any other traditions or stories that
Well,
you?
there's yeah, goddess worship is reflected in all world mythologies, which is certainly where the astrological component would tie in,
Hmm.
the zodiac. And so I did want to talk a little bit about that. Um, so when we talk about the zodiac, we're talking about and constellations, or archetypes. So just a quick definition of archetype. An archetype is a type or example, you could say even a template or a mold, that it provides a formula, if you will, to to pattern things. It's a pattern, a type. Um, and so as I was looking into this, I found four main goddess archetypes that are reflected in the zodiac. And we know that, and there's three main ones, but we know that in neo-pagan traditions, they have the maiden, mother, and the crone, also called the triple goddess, which reflects the various phases of the moon. And those are also those archetypal images are also found in the constellations in the zodiac. And so here you have, Cassiopeia, the enthroned mother, the queen, or you could say even the grandmother. And then Coma is a young mother, and then Virgo is a young woman. And then you have Andromeda, who is kind of like, I guess, the daughter or the heir to the queen. So, right there. And then also Medusa, which is in the constellation of Perseus. You could say, well, that's more um, the bad archetype, if you will. Um, but what, in addition to these goddess archetypes following the various phases, or the phases of life, or the phases of the moon, there's also a connection between goddess spirituality and the orbit of Venus,
Hmm.
which it goes from, to lighter to dark, and then back, in kind of this cycle. Um, so and so when I was looking at the Hebrew Masorot, and I drew these images. I wanted to show you guys the book I'm working with here. Bullinger, The Witness of the Stars. I'm sure you've heard of that. From the late 1800s, and he was a pastor. He was an evangelical writer, who was looking at how he understood the gospel reflected in the stars. And perhaps it's not the best commentary on the Hebrew Masorot, but there's not a lot of information out there. And
Yeah.
so I kind of had to work with what I had and what I could find. And there's certainly been spin-off books from Bullinger, but Bullinger is the primary reference here. And so, but he goes into the symbolism behind these various goddess based. I call them goddess based. He probably wouldn't call them that, but these goddess based constellations. And so the and then the question comes up, well, why am I using Greek names specifically to describe the Hebrew Mazarot, and that's just simply because those are the names that we're familiar with. But all of this to say is that all of these these three or four or however many goddess archetypes are found within every culture, every ancient religion, including Hinduism too. But I think what, when we talk about the Hebrew Mazarot, I think what got the ancient Hebrews in trouble with idolatry is what I call deity conflation, where and you've probably, I believe you've had Michael Heiser on your podcast before.
Oh yeah.
Yes. And so, he mentioned that verse in Deuteronomy. I think it's like 32. I forgot what it was exactly,
Mm-hmm.
but he mentioned, about the partitioning of the gods among the nations.
Yeah.
And I think what got the Hebrews into trouble when they started worshiping Asherah, the Queen of Heaven, and of course, Jeremiah had his things to say about that. But I think what got them in trouble was confusing or worshiping the wrong pantheon, because they were to be devoted to the pantheon that was revealed to Abraham and Sarah. So the pantheon that had selected them, that had chosen them for them to follow, and had given them these various oaths and covenants mediated through Melchizedek. So yeah, I think that's when I talk about deity conflation, confusing the gods and goddesses, and worshiping gods and goddesses that um, were not theirs.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's also this idea that we've kind of toyed with a little bit of where like you see this a lot, like and you see this in the Bible a lot, that
Hmm.
we can do it, but you
Hmm.
guys don't.
Yeah.
And it leads you into the question why. It's
Hmm.
like uh don't make an image of anything that resembles anything on heaven or earth. That's an idol. You don't do
Hmm.
it. And you
Yeah.
kind of get into the why because I know like right after we are instructed on how they built the temples, and they have big golden statues of cherubs on like all of the posts around there, and there's all types of symbolism of angels and those kind of things. It's like you just told us not to do it, but it's okay if you do it. So, part of
Hmm.
me kind of gets into that too. But humans are prone to worship and to kind of throw all of your eggs in like this one basket of like if you did it, you probably would worship it. And it sounds silly, but I mean, when we start having this conversation with a lot of evangelicals, anything taboo, whether it's crystals or whether it's God, like they get very scared, but they're prone to like this idea of worshiping crystals, not working with crystals, not working with a
Yeah.
goddess, not honoring a goddess, but like this idea that of what God alone deserves is worship and admiration, that it would be something that would take away from
Hmm.
God. And so there's a fear there for many people
Hmm.
to look into this kind of thing. So
Yeah.
you want to tread lightly. Obviously, nobody wants to be sacrilegious. Nobody wants to um,
Hmm.
offend God, an angry God at that. Um, but it seems like there's this concentrated effort of we can do it, but you can't. And it almost seems that like this is where the power comes from. Like we're
Yes.
gonna talk to God and the goddess behind the scenes. We're not gonna tell you, but you don't do it because you begin to
Yeah.
see that throughout the scriptures as well. This like let us do it, but not you.
Yeah.
That you shouldn't have a prophet. You shouldn't look for prophets. You shouldn't look for dreamers and diviners. But we're going to give you some dreamers, prophets, and diviners, this kind of thing, to where almost like a sense of it takes the power away from the people and gives it directly to the priest class
The priest.
in
Yeah.
the clergy. But even some of the things that you've kind of shared, and we know the scriptures mention that you are all priests and kings over your own homes
Yes.
and this kind of thing. So what, I mean, what are your thoughts on that of like, it was okay for them to do it, but it's something that's kept away from the lay people as this kind of power move.
I don't know that it's kept away from the lay people. I almost get the feeling that those who are in power within the church don't really know these things either. I don't know. I could be wrong.
Yeah. I mean, we
I,
don't know, right? But when you get in,
obviously somebody knew it or it wouldn't be there within the tradition.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's almost
Uh,
like it's just taken away from everybody. It just makes me wonder too, even like Catholicism and those things of how they even like there's still honor there to the mother, like they
yes.
like for them, to pray to Mary, to honor Mary, to venerate Mary.
Mhm.
In Freemasonry, you have the Order of the Eastern Star that venerates some of the female patriarchs of the well matriarchs. I'm sorry, of the scriptures that actually honor all of them. So there's like in this like behind closed doors, away from the lay people, there is still this honoring there, even if it's not preached from the mountaintops that everyone should be doing it.
And it may be too that this information's just been lost. That's the position I tend to take. It's just lost.
Hmm.
It's
It's not that
interesting.
anybody's out to deceive anybody. It's just that it's been lost. And then, like you said, people are afraid of it.
Well, even with the idea of Jeremiah, like when they talk about like killing everybody who they've caught, like worshiping and baking cakes to the Queen of Heaven. It's like, oh no, we got to stop them, kind of thing. It's like, because it's so random. Like if you're just reading it in English, it's only mentioned like once or twice in the scriptures
Yeah, it
there. This
is.
idea, like where did she come from? Why are they worshiping it? Who did they learn it from? And you get the notion that maybe they got it from the pagan people that were around them, the Philistines or the, Amalekites and those kind of things, which were unclean. You know, they represent the demonic aspect.
Well, what's
Hmm.
interesting though is that when he's rebuking them for baking the cakes to the Queen of Heaven, they're like, she makes us happy. She keeps us healthy. She gives us abundance. Why would we stop baking cakes for her? Like, she's amazing. Like, that was kind of their response. And
And that could have echoed back to Sarah baking cakes for the visitors. I mean, because that's what Abraham tells her to do.
yeah,
Yeah,
totally. And
go
it's,
bake cakes for, yeah.
Well, there has to be a concerted effort, especially when we go back to the early pantheon, of the Canaanites, of like it was known, it was believed that Yahweh had a
Mhm.
wife,
Yes.
and her name was Asherah, and
Well,
it's
I would disagree with that. I would say her name was El Shaddai.
okay,
Hmm. So, yeah, and Asherah would have been the Canaanite name for the mother goddess.
okay, but even so, we it's all
Yeah,
changed in the English, so somebody's a lot smarter than we are, changed
yeah.
it and just said we're just going to put God.
Hmm.
Every time it uses a different name of God, we're going to change it to God. We're gonna give you a different translation of the names, and the people
Although
would forget.
there are hints in the Bible that God is known by different names or has different aspects.
Yeah,
So you're okay. Well, Yahweh Sabaoth for one. I mean,
yeah,
what do you do with that?
yeah,
David prays to him before he goes and slays Goliath.
yeah,
That is not.
yeah.
That's not the main God of Israel.
We're told that those are just titles at first, like these
Yeah.
different
Mhm.
titles and badges that God wears. And personally, I would look at all of the gods and goddesses that are under God as different titles, but also different beings. Or
Mhm.
obviously, like you said, Deuteronomy 28, where he's like, "I'm going to establish this. This is the divine council. There's a
Mhm.
there's an order." in the heavens, and there's an order in the kingship of the land. And so again, just so much of that has been erased or forgotten, both.
And also Psalm 82, as Dr. Heiser says,
Hmm.
the council of the gods.
Yeah.
Gods themselves are being judged.
Right, and being
Yeah,
turned into men, or dying like men, it says. It was
yeah.
very interesting.
Hmm.
Let me ask you this about the stars, and because it's very interesting within scriptures,
Hmm.
uh, dealing with Abraham and his descendants being as numerous as the
As
stars.
the
Now we
stars.
now I know the scripture says that in a couple of places as numerous, but I feel like there was at least two places that I saw that the word numerous isn't in there, and it says that your descendants and your offspring will be, just says, be as the stars, that they would maybe be remembered in the stars, or they become stars. Have you?
I
Is it?
think there's that implication there, definitely. Hmm. Yeah.
Is this place of remembrance of like
Yeah.
the temple that is above, right? And Hebrews
Yeah.
goes into this a little bit, right? This the earthly temples and tabernacles were a reflection of the heavenly
Of the
temples,
zodiac, yeah, the
and
zodiac, the celestial temple.
they're all in there, like all the stories, the
All the
the
stories.
names of the stars, like they're all in there. In this, even though we forgot, all you have to do is look up, like
Uh-huh.
they're all there.
Yeah. That, yeah, it's all included there. Hmm.
It's a fun one.
Yeah.
I wanted to run that by you, because I remember seeing that. I was like, do I want this to say that, or does it really say that they will
No,
be?
I think you're correct.
Yeah.
There's an overarching story that, and the scriptures say, the sky is like compares the sky to a scroll.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think that was where that was how they read scripture,
Mm.
looking up at the stars.
I mean, everyone. I mean, that could possibly be where the overarching silver lining comes in. No matter where you were, these
Hmm.
stories tend to overlap. And but
And then
the.
those stories are reflected in the Bible. That I believe is it Samson that reflects the story of Hercules, and
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I mean you have individual stories that mirror the stories in the constellations.
Yeah, it's fun, just finding all these names again. Just kind of just looking up what they mean is really where you start, and then maybe a Google search or a Britannica search or something like that, and you start finding that there was like whole traditions,
Yeah,
um, that honored these, gods and goddesses, um, and it wasn't evil. It
yeah.
seems like whether it was during the Crusades or whatever, somebody took it over and changed it and hid it.
Hmm.
And it's been an attack on the feminine
Yeah.
since those times,
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
and anyone who brings it up too.
Yes. Yeah, this is not, I cannot talk about this stuff at church.
Yeah, it's fun to be able to host podcasts like this, and discussions where people have this belief, but they haven't had anybody that they can talk to, and they haven't, um, heard anyone kind of vocalize maybe some of the conclusions that they're coming to, because you're going to be in trouble if you do, kind of thing. That's where we come from in the Bible Belt as well.
Yeah. And a lot of it, as I said, as I I I was had all these questions during COVID, during the pandemic, and so, it's not like I was able to go to church. So, yeah, it's I guess totally disconnected in that sense.
Yeah.
Um,
So with the book, the title of the book, you're talking about the groves, but beneath the groves, what?
mhm.
So is that just a euphemism that you just kind of look deeper than the surface, or is that
Yes,
or are you talking about the ground at all?
the ground itself.
Okay.
The space, the
Hmm.
sacred space, known as the sacred groves. Um,
Well, this concerted effort that I'm trying to interject, in the scriptures, they were told to go cut down the groves. So, like, oh, this is where they're going to find happiness, peace, and rest. Be ashamed if someone cut down their poles in their sacred groves, you know?
mhm, yeah, yeah. So there is a contrast there, contradictions,
Yeah. I don't know. It just, you know,
and that need for restoration.
need for
Hmm.
sure.
Yeah.
I think it was through COVID too that it she introduced herself to us, which was
Okay. Well,
after being diagnosed with COVID and having a near death experience together, and it was a rough what
mhm,
3 weeks or something where like every day we were losing oxygen, like every day
mhm,
we had shortness of breath, and it just kept going and going. It felt like we were going to die. We felt like we needed to go to the hospital, but everybody who went to the hospital didn't come back, and it was just all of this chaos, confusion, and fear. They didn't give us any medicine. They just kind of diagnosed us and said, "Hey, may the best man win. This is your bout with
mhm,
it." And it was very scary. I was calling different Christian friends of mine, getting them to pray for me and things like that. And once we made it through, once we started to see the light and our
mhm,
body started to heal, I remember looking into some of the ancient imagery. It was really with the pine cone. I was seeing like, why is the pine cone in the Vatican? Why are the Anunnaki and these divine beings and Sumer holding this pine cone up to the
oh
sun?
yeah, I've seen that image.
And
Hmm.
I just started doing some just research on the pine cone and found out the the natives that lived on this land that we're on, they had a relationship with nature,
Hmm.
and they would use pine sap and pine resin to treat respiratory infections. I'm
Hmm.
laying on the couch, gasping for breath, calling Christians, "Hey, brother, pray for me, man. I feel like I'm going to die. Pray. I know you speak the word over me, brother. I need help." And they didn't give me any medicine, but literally in my backyard was the tree of life that was connected. And she's bleeding out of her, like
Wow.
my healing. And we go, and it's just resin all over the trees. Once I found that out, it was just the biggest epiphany and awakening, and then started just going down. Like, how can I honor you? Like, where is this in the scriptures? Is like, and it's just been a roller coaster since that day.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
see too, just over and over again in our studies, that even the Christian faith honors the gods and the goddesses. They just don't tell you that's what they're doing.
Hmm.
Like with the pagan holiday Imbolc that just passed,
Yes.
they honor Brigid. Brigid
Mhm.
was originally the goddess who kindled the fire and who healed and who brought forth the first buds of spring. And the Christian faith has now adopted Brigid as a Saint Brigid's Day. It's
Yes.
celebrated the same way, she's described the same way, but she's not a goddess, she's a saint.
Hmm.
So, in some ways, these things are sprinkled through the Christian faith and the Christian traditions. You just have to have eyes to see them. And I think one of the first ones we saw visiting cathedrals and churches, you see the image of this man, this leafy man's face with leaves, sometimes with deer antlers. And you see it in Christian churches and Christian spaces. And then you start looking it up, and it's the green man who is actually the god Sylvanus, who is the god of nature and the forest. And so these beings are still honored and
Yeah.
are still, I'm not saying they're worshiped, because I do
It's the same
believe we
same
worship
thing.
the creator of all. But they are definitely honored in the spaces of the Christian
Mhm.
faith. You just have to dig a little deeper sometimes, because even Sophia, Agape, Pistis, Elpis.
Those are saints in the Catholic tradition that were adopted, but when you go before that,
Mhm.
those are Greek goddesses.
Yeah,
But
they
now
are
their stories and their names were taken and just kind of whitewashed to be
co-opted into the
preserved, and it's like there's something deeper here.
definitely.
Yeah. And reading it in the scripture as faith, hope, love, and wisdom, you can still get so much
Yeah.
beauty from that. But then to
Yeah,
take it a step deeper and see who they were as beings and as these deities and
yeah,
as
faith,
guides
hope,
and
and
helpers who can
charity.
still appear and help us today. Like it's just such a
Yeah,
beautiful journey.
yeah, it is. Yeah.
So I don't think I see. So what I'm trying to bring to the table, and maybe you as well, is just be able to see this within your own tradition
Yeah.
because it's
Mhm.
there
Yeah, it is.
for those who have eyes to see, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So where do we go next in your book? What are some of your next pointers that you wanted to share?
I believe that covers the main points. Unless there's anything you wanted to bring up.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
It's just something again. It's very near and dear to our hearts. Going back to these words and these helpers and the the gods and the goddesses from Genesis to Revelation. I think it's one thing if it was just Old Testament and it's the old part and that's done. We're in a New Testament, we're in a new covenant, and you begin to see these names popping up all through the New
Mhm.
Testament as well as allies who came and assisted the disciples and the apostles and um, and even the disciples and apostles maybe even being some kind of divine beings, if you will, or priest of those divine beings.
Mhm. Yeah.
Going back to the stars
Yes.
with the imagery, I'm sure you're talking about the zodiac and the Mazzaroth, and you see Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and all of the old
Yes.
church
Mhm.
art are like usually within the old church art in the old Bibles, they have a lion with them. One of them has a lion. One of them has like an eagle with them. Another one has
That
like
has a man.
like another man, and
Mhm.
the other one is a bull. Like
Yes.
in the iconography that are just kind of like randomly placed, but I don't think any of that was random. It's in there
No.
again for those who have eyes to see, and I think it was a part of our tradition. I think it was probably known. I mean, they
Mhm.
had these discussions. It wasn't like a revelation epiphany for us to even be mentioning this stuff, which is like all like brand new to us.
Hmm. Yeah, even the image of the fish, and then Jesus mentions the water bearer.
Hmm.
And when you had, I saw your podcast with Jordan Maxwell, and I thought that what he had to say about Aquarius was very interesting. But it's not what people think it is.
Oh yeah, obviously,
And it
right?
makes me wonder if, in Isaiah it says, as the waters of Noah.
Mm,
I did uncover that the ancients actually believed that Aquarius might have caused the flood.
mm,
Mm.
I don't know
wow.
if you've encountered that theory or not.
I have not.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's interesting. So in some of the text and stuff, you see some mentions of like Jupiter. I think it's
Hmm.
in the Metamorphosis. It goes into some of that and talking about how like these little silver linings again. How like in the beginning it was always spring. There was
Hmm.
no fall. There was no other seasons, and they walked with the gods in this play in the cool of the day, if you will. And
Yes.
you just
Hmm.
see these little parallels, like throughout all the traditions, and I find them all beauty, and I think they all complement one another, and I
Hmm.
think that you can't really understand one without the other because the languages are um, have been changed, and we've
Yeah.
been taught to kind of pit, uh, you know, against one another if
Hmm.
one uses one of the ancient names, which is just a different language.
Yeah, it is. Hmm.
I really see the Tower of Babel essence going on, where there was a concerted effort of where all the people came together with
And
one
that
voice.
reflects what went on earlier at Mount Hermon with the Watchers and Enoch.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's this continuity. There's this, these themes that keep resurfacing. If it's not the watchers or the fallen ones, it's the, later it's the people trying to do the same thing. And then, and then you get the secret combinations in the Book of Mormon. It's all the same.
Yeah, really interested. I mean, I've got some Mormon books that I've downloaded. I haven't read the Book of Mormon or anything. I did an interview with a friend of mine years ago who was a Mormon, and after being a Christian, and it was I think there's a huge misunderstanding, and
There is.
rightfully so. But there's once he started sharing with me like how they operate, it sounded more biblical than the Southern Baptist Convention. It sounded more
It
biblical
is.
than the charismatic
Yes, it
movements and how
is.
they
It's
still
very
operate
biblical.
in like a
And
lot of
I
the
mean,
beauty of the priesthoods and
yeah.
things like that.
And the temple is thoroughly biblical. It's my favorite place to be.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a bad PR. I don't know. If someone's like, which
It's there to
most
be
of this stuff
unknown.
has it, right?
It's yeah, it's and also, that and I think you've mentioned before on your podcast that occult just means hidden. And so it's that hidden aspect of the temple. Nobody knows what really happens. And that doesn't make it bad. Just because you don't know what's happening, that don't make it that doesn't make it evil. It's just, yeah, it's just sacred. Yeah.
So
So
your book is Return to Memory,
return to memory.
Recovering the Melchizedek Mysteries. And Melchizedek is a big one in the Mormon.
Yes, yes, he is. The Melchizedek priesthood,
Yeah.
and this does get into the issues of women and priesthood. My book delves into that some too, which is a very touchy subject for a lot of Mormon women, along with the goddess.
hmm do you see them as being more open to this conversation, or at least more honoring to the women?
I think there has been some efforts recently to raise awareness of these issues, and there has been more openness in the Mormon tradition than there used to be. But I think that's because people feel so free to ask questions now, and because of the internet.
hmm
Um,
That's
so
good.
yeah,
It should be
there's
that way. We're supposed to
yeah.
ask and seek and knock and not just be quiet
Mm,
and shut up and you'll find out after you die. Like, that's not a good answer. That's not
yeah.
what
Mm,
my Bible says anyway.
hmm
yeah. And there's certainly things I don't talk about at church. I've learned how to keep my mouth shut.
Yeah, you learn to speak the
Oh,
language depending on where you
yes,
are.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So the book is Return to Memory. We will make sure we link it in the show notes. Everybody get it. I'm excited to read it. I haven't read it yet. Especially for me, I've never thought of Sarah as being like an aspect of the goddess nature.
Yes.
Honestly, this may make me sound shallow, but just from reading the Bible and growing up in Sunday school, I just always thought she was an old lady who had a kid at a really old age, like I haven't dug into her story to see those beautiful things that you have mentioned today. So I am excited to read the book, and
Yeah.
we'll make sure it's linked in the show notes. It's available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble.
Okay.
And wonderful to meet you. This was an amazing conversation. Thank you
Thank
so much
you.
for coming on.
Thank
Yes,
you.
it was fun. Yeah.
And it's been an honor.
Thank you for entertaining some of my music.
Yes.
And likewise, it's beautiful when you find somebody that you can talk to and just roll ideas off of about
Yeah.
some of these things that you've been seeing in the Bible. Because like you said, you go to church and try to do it, you may not be invited back. That's kind of what we found out.
That's
Yeah.
yeah.
Michelle,
Okay.
thanks for coming on. We'll have to do it again. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed. I want you to know that there is a video right here that you can watch a video right by me. Click this video.
No, don't click his video. Click my video. His video is probably about demons and dark stuff anyways. Mine's probably about angels and awesome stuff.
She has a point. So you decide.
The demon or the angel? What do you go with?